this afternoon, and what we will do is I'll tell you a little bit about the Mathematics Teaching Practices Academy, like what it is, let me introduce myself back up. My name is Ashley Cook. I'm with the Kentucky Department of Education. I work in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. So after I tell you about the Mathematics Teaching Practices, we'll talk a little bit about why the Office of Special Education and Early Learning has chosen math as a focus area. And then we'll talk a little bit about how what the participants will actually do as part of the academy. And we're a really small group, so if you have questions, please feel free to just unmute and ask me, or you can put them into the chat if you prefer, whatever works best. So the Office of Special Education and Early Learning and the Kentucky Center for Mathematics partnered for a professional learning opportunity for elementary and middle school math and special education teachers. So the idea of this academy was actually developed prior to COVID, so it was already going to be a virtual learning opportunity. The academy focuses on the 8 mathematics teaching practices with the goal of improving outcomes for students with disabilities. If you're not familiar with the 8 mathematics teaching practices, we would definitely take a look at those throughout the session. And these learning sessions are led by Kentucky Center for Mathematics teacher leaders and conducted virtually over a 10-week cycle. So the purpose is to engage regular and special education teachers in the mathematics teaching practices. The process is through a cohort model. There's a cohort that starts each month for grades 3 through 5 and one for 6 through 8. And like I said, these are led by classroom teacher experts from across Kentucky, and each is 10 weeks long. So the first session is like an introduction, get to know you type activity. And then following that is 8 weeks of diving into those mathematics teaching practices, and it closes out with a capstone project. So these are the teacher leaders from across the state. One thing that's really cool about the academy is these are classroom teachers who are also using these mathematics teaching practices in their own classrooms. And we're hearing from participants that they're getting a really great connection to the other teachers in the academy and the teacher leaders. So a module has been created for each of the mathematics teaching practices, and those practices are based on the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics Principles to Action. So part of the academy is done asynchronously, which will be completing those modules, and then there's a once-a-week meeting where the content for the module is discussed and the teachers can collaborate the practices in the classroom. So these are all research-informed teaching practices, and they support mathematics learning of all students. It's a core set of high leverage practices and essential teaching skills necessary to promote deep learning. And this is all paid for through a grant to scale the implementation of mathematics teaching practices across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So I want to talk a little bit about why the Office of Special Education is involved in this, because like I said, it is for general education and special education teachers. So the state is required by the Office of Special Education Programs to develop a comprehensive multi-year plan to improve results for students with disabilities. And so each state identifies a measurable result. So Kentucky's is to increase the percent of students with disabilities performing at or above proficient in middle school math, specifically at the 8th grade level, with an emphasis on reducing novice performance by providing professional learning, technical assistance, and support to elementary and middle school teachers around implementing, scaling, and sustaining positive behavioral supports and interventions and supports and evidence-based practices in math. So that's really why it's for that 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. We all know that math is a cumulative subject. And so in order to see those results at the 8th grade level, we do have to start in the grades prior to that. As administrators, I'm sure you all are probably aware of some of our Kentucky school districts level of proficiency, but I want to take a second to look specifically at some reading and math scores. These are all from 2018, 2019, really the last set of data that we have that's comparable to previous years. So first, we're going to look at Kentucky school districts, and these are students with disabilities in middle school reading. So these are proficiency rates. The red indicates that 0 to 16.7% proficiency, and that blue color is 60.9% and 92.5% proficiency. So obviously we'd like to see a lot more blue throughout the state, but we definitely see some clusters We do see quite a bit of that tan color, that tan orangey color. So I'm going to switch this now to our math for students with disabilities in middle school. And we've gone from several clusters of that blue to just a couple, and we have almost half of our districts in Kentucky with proficiency between 0 and 16.7% for mathematics. So not fantastic scores there. So I want to talk now about a couple of some research and some studies that show us why mathematics is so important for future outcomes. The first one we're going to look at is actually from early childhood. It's very new. I think it was released in 2020. It was a super small quasi-experimental study, but what they did is they had a group of 4-year-olds in sort of like a preschool type setting. The students engaged in math-based play and the other half didn't. And then after 6 weeks of that, they just reassessed all of the students to see where they were developmentally. And these are some of the results. So they found that the students who engaged in those play-based math activities saw a positive effect on their personal social skills, their fine motor skills, their language skills, and their gross motor development. And that's just in comparison to those other students who didn't get that. But that was, I believe it was a 6 to 7 week time. So like I said, super new, definitely would like to see some more research or studies done on this, but it was a really interesting result in such a short amount of time. Then if we look at elementary, in 2007, a group did a data analysis where they just pulled out elementary subject scores and looked at the long-term impacts that those students had. Like, how did they do in high school? Did they go to college? Did they graduate with their peers? And what they found was that elementary math skills are a better predictor of long-term success than any other subject. And so that one was released in 2007. And for middle school age, the ACT.org actually did a very large data analysis, and they pulled it together, and it's called the Forgotten Middle. If you're a middle school teacher or a principal, may want to check that out at some point, but they looked at several different areas, and one, of course, was math. And what they found was that relevant math education by 8th grade is the most accurate predictor of a child's future outcomes. And so relevant education would be high quality teaching and then access to appropriate grade level content standards. And so some specifics that they saw was these students had a higher likelihood of going to college, and they were more likely to be successful in high school, college, and future careers, including things like just graduating on time with their peers. So we definitely have some evidence to support how important that quality math instruction is. And so that sort of supports our journey from how we got from that state systemic improvement plan to these mathematics teaching practices academy. In 2015 is when states started to be required to do the SIP and the state identified measurable results. So that's when that was developed. Working with a large group of stakeholders within KDE and some other representatives from districts, the team decided to adopt those 8 mathematics teaching practices that were determined by the National Council of Mathematics Teachers. In that same year, Kentucky applied for and received a state personnel development grant. That grant is intended to help develop the skills of our teachers who work with students with disabilities, also including those teachers who work in the gen ed setting, but like with students with disabilities in their classrooms. And then from that grant, this partnership with the Kentucky Center for Mathematics and KDE started. And so the vision of the Academy is so that students with disabilities can get the best of both worlds, meaning they can participate in an inclusive setting and receive high quality math instructions with teachers working in tandem using research-informed mathematics teaching practices. And so looking at those teaching practices specifically, this is probably pretty small on your end of the screen, but these are those 8 mathematics teaching practices. It all has come from the principles to actions, the ensuring mathematics success for all. And these are all research informed, which is one of the main reasons why they were chosen. We want to make sure we are providing our teachers with things that we know are going to work. And another great piece of these practices is they're meant for any level of classroom. So you can use them in a preschool setting, you can use them in an AP calculus setting. So they definitely have been shown to support learning in any area, including for your special education teachers use them, they can use them in that co-taught setting and in resource. So they're really adaptable to any setting. I want to share this tool. This is the Kentucky Mathematics Innovation Practice Profile. We use those 8 mathematics teaching practices, and this document just operationalizes them and shows what quality math instruction in the classroom looks like. So it can be used to support the implementation of any mathematics innovation and to help teachers understand what this actually looks like to implement it in the classroom. So one of the big pieces of our mathematics teaching practices is trying to get to the point where we have tier 1 instruction that is effectively implemented so that all of our students receive a higher quality education and the best atmosphere for inclusion is created. It helps mitigate some of our other impacts of really identifying when a student truly has needs further interventions in math specifically. So throughout the academy, the goal of the academy is to positively shift practices. We know that our teachers are already doing great things in their classroom, but we want to help support them in moving towards something that's more effective. So looking at how to shift these practices, the academy spent some time on this document. It's from the Everything You Need for Mathematics Coaching. That QR code takes you to the full version of this, which they are all the 8 mathematics teaching practices. So like looking at shift 1, moving from stating a standard toward communicating expectations for learning. So I'm sure most teachers are writing their goals on the board or their standards on the board or having that I can statement. But if we take that though and move it toward having a lesson specific learning goal and then re-engaging students in that goal at critical times within the lesson, we can understand the students understand the lesson's purpose and what is expected of them. So we're moving away from when students are asking, why are we learning this? To they know when, and the teachers providing them with that throughout the lesson. So this is also a pretty new resource. This was released in March of 2021, but with the Mathematics Teaching Practices Academy research guides all of the work. And so this actually comes from What Works Clearinghouse. That QR code takes you to the full thing. When I saw it, I was like, man, I wish I'd had this when I was teaching, but it's focused on assisting students struggling with mathematics intervention in the elementary grades. It is not directly aligned with the mathematics teaching practices, but they definitely support one another. And it's a great tool that we know that the What Works Clearinghouse has to be research based. So I just wanted to make sure you all had access to this. And I had talked a little faster than I did when I was practicing. So that I just wanted to also show you, this is a QR code that takes directly to the application. We will be starting cohorts from winter through spring. So we'll start 2 actually in February, and then an additional, so 2 each of the 3 through 5 and the 6 through 8. And then 1 will roll on each month through July. So teachers are welcome to apply anytime. Basically, those who apply up until they start in the February date, that's the cohort they'll go into, and then from there just rolls on. Definitely would encourage, if you have those co-teaching pairs, to encourage them to attend together if they'd like to. I think that could be a really powerful way to really move forward with that co-teaching setting. And if you have questions for me, if your teachers have questions for me, this is my email address. I'm more than happy to answer any questions now or in the future through email.
Thank you, Ashley. If you have some questions, we still have several minutes left. Or Ashley, if you want to expand on something, that would be fine. Well, if there is no questions, we're going to end this session a little bit early. And I think our next session is coming up. We have lunch from 12:25 to 1:05, and then round 7 start at 1:10. So thank you for attending. Thank you, Ashley, for presenting. And we will stop this session.
Yep, thanks so much.